Hey there, amazing people. Ever felt that pang of longing, that deep desire for respect, only to be met with coldness? Or maybe that knot of fear in your stomach when you think you're being judged unfairly? Perhaps you've carried the weight of someone else's hurtful words, that sharp pain that lingers long after they're spoken? And have you ever had that nagging suspicion, that little voice in your head telling you things aren't as they seem? Well, if any of that resonates with you, then this story is absolutely for you. It's a tale that tugs at the heartstrings, a journey through humiliation to an unbelievable act of love. Before we dive in, take a moment to tell me in the comments below, where in the world are you watching from? It's always incredible to see how far our stories reach. And hey, if you're ready to get swept away by this emotional roller coaster, how about giving that like button a little tap? It lets me know you're here and ready. Thank you, you wonderful souls. Now, imagine walking into a place, your heart full of hope, only to have it shattered in an instant. That feeling of your cheeks burning, your throat tightening as you're made to feel less than. That's where our story begins today. Let's dive in to see what happened when a simple woman faced the ultimate humiliation, until her husband stepped in and did something absolutely extraordinary. Meet Elara. Elara wasn't someone who craved fancy things or the spotlight. Her world revolved around her small, cozy home and the unwavering love she shared with her husband, Finn. They weren't wealthy, not by a long shot. Finn worked tirelessly at the local workshop, his hands rough but his heart gentle. Elara often mended clothes and did odd jobs to make ends meet. Their life was simple, yes, but it was filled with a quiet joy, a contentment that many with riches often longed for. One sunny afternoon, Elara decided to treat herself. There was a new department store in town, a gleaming palace of fabrics and finery that had everyone buzzing. It wasn't the kind of place Elara usually frequented, but she had saved a little bit of money, enough for a small treat, maybe a new scarf or a pretty trinket. She smoothed down her simple dress, took a deep breath, and walked in. The air inside was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the hushed tones of shoppers. Everything sparkled. Elara felt a little out of place, but she held her head high and began to browse. Her eyes landed on a beautiful silk scarf, a soft shade of blue that reminded her of Finn's eyes. She gently reached out to touch it. That's when it happened. A woman, impeccably dressed with sharp gaze, approached her. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Can I help you? Or are you just looking?" Elara's cheeks flushed. I was just admiring this scarf," she stammered, pulling her hand back. The woman's lips curled into a sneer. "Admiring? I doubt someone like you can afford anything in here. This store is for discerning clientele." Her words hung in the air, sharp and cruel. Other shoppers nearby seemed to freeze, their conversations fading as they watched the scene unfold. A wave of humiliation washed over Elara. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. But the woman wasn't finished. She called over a store employee, a young man with a nervous expression. "Please see this person out. I don't want them touching the merchandise." The employee looked uncomfortable, but he nodded and gestured toward the exit. Elara's heart pounded in her chest. Tears welled up in her eyes as she walked out of the store, the woman's scornful laughter echoing in her ears. The shame was a heavy cloak, suffocating her with each step she took. She walked home, her head down, replaying the scene over and over in her mind. By the time she reached her little cottage, her spirit felt utterly crushed. She didn't tell Finn what had happened right away. She couldn't bring herself to relive the humiliation. But Finn, being the perceptive and loving man he was, noticed a change in her. He saw the sadness in her eyes, the way she seemed withdrawn. That evening, as they sat by the fireplace, he gently took her hand. "Elara, my love," he said softly, his voice filled with concern. "What is it? You seem troubled." Hesitantly, Elara recounted her experience at the store, the words tumbling out in a rush of hurt and anger. As she spoke, Finn's expression grew darker. The gentle warmth in his eyes was replaced by a steely resolve. He listened intently, his hand squeezing hers in silent support. When she finished, a long silence hung in the air. Elara waited, unsure what to expect. Finn wasn't a man of grand gestures or fiery outbursts. He was quiet, thoughtful, but she could see the determination hardening his gaze. "Elara," he said finally, his voice low but firm, "that woman, she had no right to treat you that way. No one does." The next morning, Elara was surprised when Finn told her he wouldn't be going to the workshop. He was usually the first one there. "I have something I need to take care of," was all he said, a mysterious glint in his eyes. Elara watched him leave, a mix of worry and curiosity swirling within her. She couldn't shake off the memory of the previous day, the sting of the woman's words still sharp. She tried to distract herself with chores, but her mind kept wandering to Finn and what he might be doing. Hours passed. The sun climbed high in the sky, and then began its descent. Elara was starting to get anxious when she finally saw Finn's familiar figure walking up the path. But something was different. He wasn't alone. And behind him was a truck, a very large truck. As the truck pulled up to their small cottage, Elara's jaw dropped. It was filled with furniture, beautiful, expensive-looking furniture. And then she saw more people, men in uniform carrying boxes and rolls of fabric. "Finn, what is all this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Finn smiled, a wide, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He took her hand and led her towards the truck. "Remember that store, Elara? The one where they were so unkind to you?" Elara nodded, her heart pounding with a strange mix of apprehension and disbelief. "Well," Finn continued, his voice calm but with an underlying note of triumph, "I bought it." Elara stared at him, her mind struggling to process his words. You what?" "I bought the entire store, Elara," he repeated gently. "Every last bit of it. The building, the merchandise, everything." Elara was speechless. How? Finn was a hard-working man, but they certainly didn't have the kind of money to buy a whole department store. She looked at him, her eyes filled with confusion and a hint of suspicion. Finn chuckled softly, seeing the question in her eyes. "It wasn't easy, my love. I've been working on a few inventions in my spare time. Remember those little gadgets I used to tinker with in the shed? Well, one of them turned out to be quite valuable. I sold the patent." Elara's eyes widened in understanding. Finn had always been brilliant, his mind buzzing with ideas. But she had never imagined anything like this. And you bought the store?" she stammered again. Finn nodded, every single inch. "And guess what, Elara?" He paused, his eyes twinkling. "You're the new owner." The realization hit Elara like a wave. She, the simple woman who had been humiliated and thrown out, now owned the very place that had caused her so much pain. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of disbelief and overwhelming emotion. Just then, the woman from the store, the one who'd been so cruel, walked up, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock. She had apparently heard the news that the store had been sold. You bought this?" she stammered, looking from Finn to Elara. Finn simply nodded, his expression unreadable. Elara, however, looked at the woman, not with anger or triumph, but with a quiet dignity. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "We did." The woman's face crumpled. She seemed to realize the magnitude of her mistake. Finn turned to Elara. "What do you want to do, my love? It's your store now." Elara looked at the store, then at Finn, and then at the workers unloading the furniture. A thoughtful expression crossed her face. I think," she said slowly, "I want to make it a place where everyone feels welcome. A place where kindness matters more than how much money you have." And that's exactly what she did. Elara transformed the store. She hired people based on their character, not their connections. She made sure the prices were fair, and she personally greeted customers with a warm smile. The store became known not for its luxury, but for its kindness and the genuine care shown to everyone who walked through its doors. The woman who had been so cruel eventually came back, her pride swallowed by the need for a job. Elara, with her newfound strength and compassionate heart, gave her a chance, teaching her the value of treating everyone with respect. And Finn? He stood by Elara's side, his love and support unwavering. He continued to tinker and invent, his quiet brilliance always a source of strength for their family. This story, my friends, reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, and true worth lies not in what you have, but in who you are. It shows us the incredible power of love, and how one act of kindness can change everything. And it teaches us that even in the face of humiliation, dignity and compassion can ultimately triumph. What did you think of Elara's decision? Would you have done the same? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a little reminder of the power of kindness. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are all amazing.